Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both in terms of our study. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So I'll await some questions. I'll mute my microphone while you're formulating your question. Don't all rush at once. Thank you.
There's something I want to say, which is probably a bit of a rarity in itself. And it's that today something happened for Jean and myself that in a world that's increasingly full of negativity and cynicism, we were in the company of a lady who very recently sadly bereaved, and in her grief, which was profound and is profound, she just exuded such love. And as you talk about holy company, well, if ever there was holy company, that was it. She was so, and it wasn't just a temporary feeling of well-being that we got out of her being in our company. It was something that's going to last, and very, very profound. This is a lady who just the day before yesterday lost her sister, and she was so loving and so kind, and just exuded love. Is all I can say. And it's maybe it's not a question as such, but I thought it was worth sharing with you, and I thought you would appreciate it, Tom. That's it.
Yes, so anybody who has, I couldn't quite understand your statement because it was a little faint, but anyway, I'll respond. I think I got what you were saying. We tend to put death as a skeleton in a closet and ignore it. Most people do it. One question that I normally ask people is, particularly those who are older, but even the younger ones I can ask, how long do you expect to live? This is a question nobody has really sat down and considered truly. And of course, as you advance in years, inevitably, you'll ask this question if you're sensible, and you'll reconcile yourself to the fact that this is a temporary body. It is made from temporary substances. And these substances get transformed into energy and matter, there's no doubt. But at some stage or other, it's likely that a person in older age will become like a baby. And some people will say when babies are first born, they all look like Winston Churchill, no hair, no teeth, and no speech. And that's what happens in old age. It need not happen like that, of course. So the inevitability of death is tested out. There's the story in the Mahabharata where Yudhishthira sends his brothers to fetch water, and they come across a lake that's inhabited by a ghost. And the lake asks questions and says, you may take the water from me, but actually, if you don't answer any of these questions adequately, or even don't even bother, you'll be turned to stone. And all the brothers were turned to stone. Every brother that went to fetch water, Yudhishthira was known for his wisdom. And he wondered, where are my brothers? And he came to the lake and he understood what was happening. So one of the most profound questions that was asked, tell me, what is that greatest paradox in humans? And he answered that everybody will die except me. Every one of us will die, or there's no doubt. But we have made this presumption that everybody except me is going to die because we don't consider it, we don't like to consider it. And those who have reconciled themselves to the phenomenon of death will not only be peaceful, happier, reflect inner wisdom within them, but it will also reflect love. Because for several reasons. If somebody does not acknowledge this phenomenon of death in relation to themselves, then how can they really firstly, acknowledge the ignorance of others and have compassion for the others. But secondly, understand the bigger scheme of things. See things from the point of view that God sees them. If we are able to see from God's level, then we won't see an external world. At the personal level, of course, there's an external world that comes and goes and has birth and life and death, and we celebrate the birth. Somehow we commiserate the death, thinking that it's an end. The end of the world has come. But those who have the knowledge, they will understand it correctly. They will understand and look at it more from the divine level. And at that level, the external world, the coming and going of it, the birth, the life, the death of it, is not really there. How could God allow this to happen? Is not a question that arises. From God's level, it's not there. And so if we bring in this divine level, then all our outside problems connected with birth and life and death will fall away like sunbeams passing through glass. You know, the story I normally give, there was a group of glass panes, and they decided that they would block the sun. They felt that the sun has had a free transit through us, no visa necessary, we simply allowed it to happen. So we make a board resolution, from today we'll no longer let it happen. And so when dawn came and the sun rose and the sun beamed forth, naturally it went through the panes of glass regardless of whether you wanted it or not, or liked it or not. It's all happening. So when it's going through the panes of glass, we call this a transcendent position. In other words, the divine level. But the human level wants to jostle and prevent it, make war, and it ends up with everything battering everything else, and the panes of glass will fragment, go into a fractured state, but the sun still beams. When the sun was beaming through the panes of glass, this was the imminent position. But when it wasn't, when all the panes of glass had been removed, the sun beamed anyway. The sun beaming anyway, the transcendent, the immanent. It has nothing to do with you or me or any kind of jealous and punishing God or somebody in the sky controlling things. Not like that. We have to outgrow these ideas and learn to sit where that divine sits. Then we can see things afresh. And then all the obstacles and difficulties, so-called, belonging to the external world, goes away, because at that level, there's no external and no internal world. Somebody who knows this will have a loving attitude. As I said, for two reasons. Firstly, for those out of compassion caught up in this syndrome, caught up in the ignorance that says, death belongs to everybody except me. I'm the one exception, only because I don't think about it. So a standard question I ask people, how long do you think you may live? And what on earth kind of question is that? How on earth would we know this? I say, well, you can make a reasonable, mathematically calculated guess in your country in which you live, because the birth rate, or at least the death rate in different countries is different. So in your country where you live, what is the average death or lifespan for, let's say, for a woman? What is the average lifespan for a man? Women tend to live longer in most countries. You work it out. Let's say, for argument's sake, that for a woman it's 78 years, for a man it's 75. And how old are you now? Supposing you feel that you're 25 and you have a whole lifetime ahead, and you won't even consider this question, well, imagine how quickly 25 years passed. In a blink of an eye, it's gone. And I can assure you, as you get older, at the age of 50, the next 25 years has gone in a flash, and the next 25 years will go in a flash also. And soon you'll be approaching that moment. And if you don't approach it with wisdom, you'll want to cling on to life, and that is a desperate position. Of all the kleshas given by Patanjali in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the final obstacle is clinging on to life desperately. I have seen people in the process of withdrawing from the body without their consent. So the body is closing down. And if they're sensible, they realize, okay, body is closing down bit by bit. Supposing the body remains, it'll be a huge burden to others. I can't maintain myself now, so let me not be a burden, but let me not think it's the end. And the great expert on this I always quote is the late Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who studied this question of bereavement in depth and managed to come up with this notification, this observation. Every person on the border of death, every person who is slipping away, as it were, knows it. There was a question on the weekend, something about dementia. I forget who asked it and mentioned that, oh, I know where it was. It was in the UK. And said, how unfortunately for my mother, she has dementia. She hardly recognizes me anymore. It's a very sad thing. I was able to assure her that our observational experience is that at that very moment, where consciousness is now alive only, and the awareness of the body and all these other things are gone, all those people suffering from dementia are fully conscious and aware. We understand this also from studies from University of Virginia that studies things like near-death experiences and so on. And they have observed this very clearly, that absolute lucidity arrives at that moment. In other words, consciousness is there, stripped with all the other things stripped away from it. And they remember absolutely, entirely and clearly the whole of their life. And that's how they go off. And the eyes shine brightly as they go. I witnessed people going like that, and the eyes are looking. They're opening, and they're seeing something, there's no doubt, and moving away there like that. And near-death experiences all endorse this kind of phenomena of a light approaching and entering into a light, entering into a tunnel. There's a universal experience about it, and an experience of seeing all the things around you from a height or a distance and coming back. In near-death experience, it doesn't go off permanently. Coming back again and recalling in accurate, immense detail all the events in the operating theater, say, and recalling them in such a way, there's no possibility that anything could take place except that they were consciously aware and seeing this phenomena. Somebody coming back from this experience, their lives can be completely transformed because they'll have a very different perspective on the phenomenon of death. And so it doesn't matter what resolution these panes of glass pass, the sun continues to shine. It's a constant there. And the sunbeam stands as God transcendent, and the presence or absence of the glass, it makes no difference whatsoever. And so that steady principle is that principle that is within us. So death, somebody who knows this, death is not anything except a fleeting phenomena, a comma in the grand journey of things that will continue, no doubt. And so when we look at the external world and have a loving attitude toward it, looking at it from a vantage point of the transcendent, the degree to which objects are seen. When we look at an object, we're only looking at the surface characteristics. When we look at the moon, we're only looking at surface craters. We're not looking at what's in its inner core, what's below it, all the dust and so on, what's the rock that stands inside it. You know, the moon is a wonderful thing. When we see in a crater, this not just shining, but a reflective surface, brilliantly reflective. It is because it's made of glass. Some meteorite hit it, made a big dent in the surface, and all the silica got splashed and became reflective. So it's true that these parts of the moon are truly made from glass. Silica is glass. So the degree to which our objects are seen depends on the transparency of the mirror or the purity of the mind. As soon as we see things in a different way, with a sense of purity and love, of course, is the ultimate cleanser. So when we see that, then we look through the phenomena and we can bypass all the tragedy, so-called tragedy and sadness connected with these external events, because we're seeing life in depth and we're seeing man in depth. Man in depth is the divine. Let's call it God, if you will. Our human view, you see, distorts our vision. For example, if you're looking through a small hole in a screen, you'll only get a partial view. That's all that's obtained. But when the hole is made bigger and bigger, progressively, you'll see more and more. The sun was beaming through the window here, so that it was reflecting on the screen. I couldn't see the screen properly. I drew the curtain. But still, a beam of sunlight is coming through. When I open it, more sunlight comes through. When I open it more sunlight comes through. When I open it completely, it's a flood of sunlight. The whole scene then becomes visible. So what are we doing in spiritual life? We're opening our vision progressively more and more and more until we see the entire totality. And when we see the entire totality, it's no longer something that is seen. We're now looking at it from a transcendent vision point of view. So I'm not surprised that somebody who knows this is overflowing with love. And that may be exactly what you experienced, is my comment.
My little niece, who is 11, has just moved to big school, and she's a very beautiful young child and really good-natured and good-hearted. And there's a girl in her class who has been manipulating her since she arrived, and it's got worse and worse, to the state that my niece Cara can't get on the bus in the morning because she's there. And the school have taken it into consideration, but she's so subtle in her bullying that it's hard in terms of evidence. But I suppose my questions around, like, you see the pain of young children, and they don't have, they can be so mean and they're not conscious. I know adults aren't conscious of their behavior as well, but there's just something around, why does that have to happen? Because then the wounds are there from an early age, and kids can get more defended. And I suppose I'm connecting to the pain of the complexity of children in a space together, and how they can be nasty to each other, and how, like, one child can manipulate a whole class so that the one other person is ostracized. So I suppose it's kind of in great contrast to Larry's observation, and I suppose it's something around the dark elements of the human condition and how that manifests in children, even at such a young age.
So there's such a thing as herd mentality, because children don't know the subtleties of these kinds of pains. And that's the difficulty. But I've seen it in adults also. I always remember in Zimbabwe and Harare, there was somebody I was talking to in their office. And we went out and we came back, and there was a man who entered into the building, and the person I was speaking to saw him running away. And he said, "Oh, he's got my watch and my calculator and all kinds of things from the desk." So he chased after him and calling out, "Thief, thief." And people on the street caught him, and they beat him almost senseless. And the police came along and gave him another beating. I had to intervene and say, wait, let the police take him away nicely. And actually, no police need do anything, because my friend here is not going to press any charges. Let him go free. So I have seen this herd mentality where people get so riled up by group emotion. So you can imagine it's a herd mentality because it comes from the very basic area of human nature, the animalistic nature. And for this reason, we have to shift our perspective along the lines that I mentioned previously. Now, of course, there are practical things that should be done because adults will have a sensitivity toward this and understand the immense damage that can happen emotionally and psychologically to a child. And so naturally the practical elements, I mean, bullying is a huge issue today in schools. And schools and workplaces have bullying policies. But if you're able to talk to the child and able to talk to other children, because I assume this child may have some friends around, and to understand just simply the golden rule, would you like this done to you? And even to the parents, would you like this done to your child? That kind of thing. So many, many difficulties can occur because of this bullying at a very young age, including an aversion to school, an aversion to public places, an antisocial activity, antisocial residue that can be left with a child. And it just begs the question about Swami Vivekananda's idea of education, that education should be character building education. From the very start, there should be some kind of spiritual ethos. And if it doesn't happen in a formal way at school, it should happen at home. There should be a strong, firm spiritual background at home, primarily inculcated by example. If the parents have holy pictures throughout their home, if they have a small shrine or a small corner where they can sit, where they can pray every day, there's that saying, the family that prays together stays together. And even if a child sees that the parents are doing something on a regular basis, the child at a very early age will want to do the same, will want to sit there and do the same. So these would be some of my comments. I know how you feel for the child, but it has to be handled from an adult point of view. And many adults don't have that point of view. Many adults will have a hard-heartedness, dealing with the external world as it appears to them, not as it appears to the Lord of the universe, or appears to those people who are prepared to shift their point of view to a higher point of view. I hope that at least deals in some way with your, I don't know if it was a question or a comment.
Swamiji, if I may, because it's something that that I experienced, I did personally, but with my son, and I think Orla is right. I think it's very difficult when you see a beautiful young child of 11 years of age and the potential impact that's going to have on that child and the impact it has on the adults. But taking it from an adult perspective, it may be a good idea to encourage the parents to approach the other parents, because while schools have strategies and structures, this can take an inordinate amount of time, and you're dependent on all the teachers, the collective wisdom and strength of the teachers and the principal. And sometimes they've got a lot more on their plate than, they don't see this perhaps as a big an issue, but I think bullies need to be stood up to, and perhaps it's an opportunity for the parents to stand up, because this should not happen at an adult level. And if the child sees that, then that's a pretty good example. And I think what you've said, Swamiji, about reiterating that comment would you like your child or anybody's child to experience this? Then most people will say no. So I think that might also benefit Orla. Sorry.
The other point of view is, of course, that there has to be a balance, and the child has also to inculcate an element of forbearance and strength. Strength, of course, is the key virtue in human life. And I'm not recommending this as but I was a little older. I was at school, but now we're talking about, let's say, 13 years of age. So 1 year later, probably, and it's at high school or secondary school. And there was a school bully who decided to take a liking to me in an adverse way, and always kind of push me, shove me, and bully me in general. And one day, it was at a chemistry class. The teachers was facing the blackboard, and this particular child took it on himself to continuously hit me with a ruler. And I got up and I punched him on the mouth and knocked him over. And he never bullied me or anybody else again. Now, I'm not putting this out as a formula, obviously we're espousing nonviolence, but just the general characteristic of standing up for oneself. You see, when you stand up and look the other person squarely in the eye, or a group of people also, if you build up your strength and courage to such an extent, it will have an influence on the others. Because like dogs or wild animals, they know when you are frightened, when you are scared. And so there has to be that balance. Because if a child puts themselves forever in the victim mode, then they will go through life like this, unfortunately. And Swami Vivekananda was there in Varanasi. He was at a temple where monkeys were there. And he seemed to be under attack from a violent monkey. And he heard a voice, a wiser man standing behind him saying, "Face the brute." And he learned that as a life lesson, to face the brute. And when you stand up to your full height and look fiercely at the other with no hatred or mean intention, but simply enacting a drama of strength, the other person will definitely back down. And I've used this throughout my whole life. I was in a regular excursion that I had to make from Zimbabwe to Malawi. I was held up probably about 4 or 5 times by bandits who were armed. And my host in Blantyre in Malawi showed me a big cut here with great stitches. He said, "This bandit held me up in Mozambique and took a knife and cut my face. Please don't go through this territory." And unfortunately, when somebody says, "Please don't do something," I probably do it, because I'm seeing that person as God incarnate, dressed up in this way. I have nothing to fear. And I would have learned this lesson from the age of about 15, well earlier, because I learned that lesson with that school incident. It probably wasn't the right thing to do, but the background to it was to stand up. If you back down, then the situation will be worse. So I understand about the bullying. I understand about the cruelty of the herd mentality. But I also understand that the child should know. According to the Bhagavad Gita, you see, every child of 9 should be told to stand up for themselves. And so that's a little bit of another perspective on it. There has to be a balance between compassion, maturity, and taking action against bullies at an administrative and parental level on the one hand, but teaching a child that they are of great, great worth and value, that within them is the Lord of the universe, that they are the immortal self, that they are their own best friend or their own worst enemy, that they can drag themselves down or raise themselves up. They should stand tall and independent and should face the brute. I'm not advocating violence. You know, or the Swami on Wednesday said everybody should punch. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying for them to learn to adopt an attitude where people back down. I remember some years ago, and there was in Zimbabwe, and part of military service, and he was a very small built person, and he was originally a Glaswegian, and somebody picked on him, and he said to him, "Well, you're bigger than me, and if you want to take me on and go outside and make combat, that's okay. And you might beat me to a pulp and you might put me in the hospital, but watch out. You'll have to watch your back, because one day, and you won't know where and you won't know when, I'll get you." I'm not advocating violence. I'm simply advocating a certain attitude where the other person thinks twice. And it doesn't matter how big or how small you are in stature, just to stand up with the full strength and the knowledge that you are the eternal self, and water cannot wet you, and fire cannot burn you, and wind cannot dry you, and exert your strength in this way. And I can honestly say in my own life that I have, from a very early age, nothing to fear whatsoever. And invite situations that might challenge things in life. I'm not saying to go to that extreme, but what I'm saying is that strength is a key spiritual virtue, because it's based on the knowledge that, in the example of the sun with the grains of glass, the sun will shine regardless. It's the one steady thing. And when you look at the external world as it is, there are deeper dimensions to it. And when you see a person and go to the deepest dimensions, and I can quote a number of instances where I walk toward somebody who is violent or potentially violent. And even here, I would say, where we are in Drumheath Gardens, where youths have taken antagonistic actions and so on, my approach is to go out and talk to them. And when I talk to them, I lower my voice and I come to their level, and phrases such as, "Hello lads, how's it going? And what are you doing?" And casual conversation, and it literally disarms them. So there is that other dimension to this problem as well.
Thank you very much. That was very rich from Swami and Padraig. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Swamiji, I do have a concept today. So we've got Brahman, which is its totality with everything. I think you spell it like that, Brahman. Brahman.
Brahman, okay, yes.
Yeah. So that's the base of it all. And we come from love, which we are made of love. So then inside that love in Brahman, there are the senses, which is the touch, is the smell, is the sight, etc., the hearing. There's the ego, which is the identity. There's also abilities and talents, which connects the human body within the Brahman and the you, me, him, her, all, etc. So
far, your concept is like that. You see, so I'll make a comment. Yeah. You see, Brahman is not just love. So Brahman is a totality that exhibits its own nature as pure existent, the only thing that exists, the only thing that is not transient, the only thing that doesn't come and doesn't go. That's the first thing. Then how do we know such a thing exists apart from the analysis going inward, a kind of introspection that culminates in a realization, given that the primary investigative tool and the revealing tool will be a purified and clarified mind. But the mind itself will be a manifestation of another thing, and that is consciousness itself. Consciousness comes out as awareness and intelligence. And the love that comes out will be because of a blissful nature. And when we say we love something in terms of the subject and object, then we are splitting things up because we are thinking in subject and object terms. So there is this expression that comes out, we call this the world. And every single component of it is a reflection, maybe even a diluted form of the original thing. And it is the same thing, that same Brahman, as seen through a web, a woven cloth, if you will, that is a fabric, and the modern scientific words for it is the same as the Upanishads words, the fabric of time and space, causation and function, you can add. When we see things through this, then the world appears as it appears. When we revalue it and bring it back to our source, all the complications and knots within that fabric all disappear. And that was what I was saying, in response to Larry's comment. Yeah. You have the same concept?
Well, I'm not seeing it. I'm not even seeing it. But what I'm trying to explain is the concept is total. It's not, I'm not going in. It's just total. Yeah? So what is?
So when you see the totality, you see, when you may get a flash of that, let's say in meditation, then you will automatically realize that there are no parts and segments. And so my fun comment when somebody says about evolution and so on, I say, no, I don't believe in evolution because I believe in totality. And totality doesn't change. There's the old story of 4 blind men. Let's make it 4. Just to make it less complicated. And they go to investigate what is an elephant. So one of them, now this is there as Buddhist stories, Jataka tales, and it comes through in Hindu tales and parables. Ramakrishna tells the same thing. But one blind man, he feels the trunk and he says, oh, the elephant is a hose. Another one feels the leg, it's a pillar. Another one feels the tail, it's a rope. Another feels the ear, it's a plantain leaf. And so it goes on, because they only have a partial view. But here's the thing in the example. If you see the totality of the elephant, you're not really seeing an ultimate totality. If you see the elephant with sighted eyes, 2 things you'll be seeing. The elephant with a form and the background beyond it. And it is the background beyond it, plus the elephant, that is the sum totality. And even when you look at the parts, you're assuming that there's a totality. If you say the word parts, if you think that the trunk is the whole thing, then of course you'll be mistaken, and this mistakenness is called ignorance. But when you see a little bit more, in other words, when your sightedness is a little bit more, then you'll see 2 or 3 or 4 things. And full sightedness, you'll see, there's the elephant. but you still haven't caught the totality. Because to register the elephant, the form of it, beyond has to be registered also. So the elephant itself will be that aspect of Brahman plus the network of time and space and causation, or at least potentiality. We call this Saguna Brahman. That is Brahman with qualities. Nirguna Brahman, when we go to that, the elephant itself disappears.
So
You get
it's
the
not
idea.
when you connect the first thing, it's not a thing. First, I would say the first connection is love. It's impossible not to love.
Yes,
So-
but yes, but what is the basis of love?
So that's where I'm going. So the concept, which is totality, which is Brahman, is itself based on the foundation of love, which is the unity. It's the unity, and that's where it comes. When you actually see, you will not be.
Yes, because if you understand there's only one thing, then love is love of yourself. Because you don't see any separation between yourself and anything else, or any differentiation in the objective world.
Yeah. So coming from there.
And this, by the way, is called, and the Isha Upanishad mentions it beautifully, and it will say that Yastu Sarvani Bhutani, he who sees all beings in the very self, the deepest self, and the self in all beings. You can't feel any hatred. In other words, the opposite of love would be hatred. You can't feel any hatred or antagonism toward anybody by virtue of that realization of oneness. And that's, I think, what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is love? Things that have come to me with that question is a concept taken in matter. When I say it's a concept taken in matter is.
So what you mean by love is no longer a concept, it's a reality.
Exactly. So it's not something material. So it's beauty, and it's infinite because you're.
Yes, and then if you have an eye for beauty, you will see that love being expressed everywhere.
Yeah, and it's also creation, because that's
Yes.
creation,
Yes.
right? Which is linked to procreation.
Yes.
Which is misconception.
Yes.
So it's not that type of creation that is necessary for evolution. I mean, it's necessary because more humans, but love. If you see love is not procreation.
Yes, but procreation will be an extension of the pure existence which is there. It's a natural outcome, and the human love element that urges the procreation will also become from this fact: God is love. For that reason, everybody is loving in their own way and manifesting it, to others, and in such a way that it is unselfish. Most people have selfish love. When it's unselfish, completely unselfish, then really that is pure love.
Yeah.
Just this unselfish aspect of it that gives love its purity and can be traced back to God is love. So this is, in many religions, of course, this is put as sacrifice. If you are a self-sacrificing person, then naturally you're a person imbued and overflowing with this quality of love.
Yeah. So when the concept of love, totality, which is the foundation of your, is not possible to own, but we try to own it all the time. We try to catch it by
Yes.
saying things like, I love you, do you love me?
Well, exactly. Exactly. That's it. You see.
For me, an example, I was while this was coming to me, I was
So that kind of love would have to be unconditional, isn't it? I
Yeah.
love you regardless if you love me. And as I mentioned so many times, Swami Vivekananda has this triangulation definition of love, that love has no fear, it has no rival, and no reward.
Yeah.
Swamiji, I tried to explain this to my granddaughter who is 4 years of age, who got a new baby sister 2 weeks ago. And can you hear me?
Yes, just barely. Yeah.
All right, I don't know why. I tried to explain this to my 4-year-old granddaughter who got a new baby sister 2 weeks ago. And the first week, the first hour, it was okay. But then after that, she thought her baby sister should go back to where she came from. So I sat her down on Sunday, and she's only 4 years of age, but I tried to explain to her that whilst I love her, I also love her new baby sister, and that the more love you give, the more you get back. So the next day, she went to her mother and she said, up until this, she had no connection with the baby. But the next day, she went and said to her mother, can I hold the baby? And then, can I feed her? And it was just so beautiful. And I said to her, you don't lose love. You give it away, and the more you give, the more you get back. It's not something that diminishes. And it was wonderful. It really was, yeah.
And this is the beauty of the children, how they can go from jealousy to unconditional love very quickly. And not only that, but it's a lifelong thing. So she will want to look after that sibling, and mother that sibling. Yeah.
Also, when it's misunderstood, it creates differentiation. I realized nearly everything, 99.9 of the things that you will find in life are to make you confused or to fall in the trap. And I think love is one of the biggest ones, because when love is not understood well, and sometimes we think love is something that really is not, and that can be misunderstood within toxicity and behaviors that really are not love, and that can be from conditions, etc., etc. But it can create that separation instead of the.
But that's the whole idea. If we see the individualities, whether it's in terms of countries or individualities or nationalities or families or species, then we cannot really have a totality of love. And so, yeah, last night I was talking of peace. You can't really have peace if there's no love. You cannot have love if there's no deep appreciation for man in depth. So going to the deepest level, have a penetrating vision to see that unity of existence, then only will you solve all your difficulties and problems. And today you see how shameful that we, in the last century, with a century full of promise in terms of new technology and science, probably revolutionary science from 1905 onwards, and that science had to be used in developing an atom bomb. And needless millions and millions of lives in an era that was supposed to be full of advancement and civilization. And have we advanced much? Well, clearly not. Throughout the world, we have man's inhumanity to man. And the same thing that Ola had mentioned in terms of a child whose life is being made a misery by others. I think it reminds me, there's that book, is it a book by Orson Welles, is it? Or somebody will tell me, was it Animal Farm? Who wrote that?
George Orwell.
Oh, George Orwell, thank you. And then we can see how we can regress as a human race to the animalistic level, where we can butcher people. And anybody who's seen warfare close up will have an eye-opening experience that is really heartrending, to see the amount of pain and difficulty caused by warfare to innocent people. And even combatants, how today's modern warfare is brutal, completely brutal. Of course, it always was brutal, but you wouldn't expect that level of brutality in today's world. Simply relegating groups of people to the animalistic level. For example, persecution of the Jews in the Nazi era, thinking that they are no better, no worse than vermin. I was talking to a group of Quakers on Sunday, and telling them about the Quakers' contribution, tremendous contribution, providing soup kitchens and other means of support to the Irish people in the Irish famine, where people were starving. And how other people were quite happy to engender a level of intransigence, hard-heartedness, dismissing it. When you do it from the intellectual level and don't bring in the heart, that becomes a problem. So that is the greatest difficulty that we have. We need to take these measures, because all these people waging war, man's inhumanity to man, are finding intellectual justifications for it.
Swamiji, I've got a last question.
Yes. You have to be the last, since it's 8 o'clock now. Yes.
Yes. Holy men and women do not have families. So my question is that path?
On the contrary, the whole world becomes their family.
So if we all did the same, the population, so my question is that the path that we should follow? And followed by this question is,
no, because the vast majority of people will not be like that. So, but those people who live a dedicated life will take on the whole of humanity as their family. Holy Mother was baited by relatives. Oh, you see, you won't have any children. Bringing this to Ramakrishna, he said, he laughed, oh, you'll have more children than you know what to do. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them you'll have.
So what do you actually think of that miracle of Ramakrishna's mom, which was the same kind of as Virgin Mary's miracle? Well, I mean, it was kind of, well, it was coming from God. Yeah, the child. I mean, they found she was pregnant of Gadadhar when the father came back, and she was like, oh, I had this vision, and I think I'm pregnant. I think I've got a child. And then she was pregnant. So do you think that type of miracles really exist?
No, you see, I can't get involved in theology, because this is theology. And this is not philosophy, and there are people who no doubt would take it literally, but there are people who take it metaphorically. And I take it metaphorically because I'm not a theologian. So I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible to have a virgin birth, is my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So you'd have to ask a theologian about these issues.
So when you read this, how do you interpret it? Because I never believed such a thing could happen, and I didn't believe it was very
Yes, so the way we take it is that an incarnation is seen to be, avatara is the word we have in Sanskrit, and it means some being that descends. Cosmic mind acts as a balancing power from age to age and comes down to adjust what we call dharma, to make a balance somewhere. So from age to age this happens according to our Bhagavad Gita. And so that's how we would take it.
But there's a baby.
Whether you symbolize it as a virgin birth or not, that's up to you.
But there's a baby in there. I mean, that's biology.
Yes, exactly. So I believe in biology. Okay, personally. If you don't believe that, then you pick it up with. I
mean, to be honest,
you pick it up with a theologian. So we close this off now, and so we chant Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, peace, peace, peace be unto all. So thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami. Guramaga.
Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, well, Swamiji.